Reed Blankenship. Man, this should be a lesson to every undrafted rookie free agent out there. Try to catch on to a team through your special teams play, and then if you get that opportunity, you go for it because, man, Reed Blankenship's been a heck of a story these past couple of weeks. Let's talk for a little bit, y'all. What's up, Cerebral football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. If you're new to the channel, this will be the first, second, third time you caught my content, and you enjoyed today's discussion. We're on a journey. We're on a path. We just crossed over 6,800 subscribers. We're heading towards 7,500 subscribers. I would love for you to be a part of that equation and join the Cerebral football community, as we call ourselves the Cerebral Lights here. But need you to hit that subscribe button to do that. To my OG subscribers, hat in hand, here to ask you that favor, guys. Hit that thumbs up button. Smash the like button. Help me spike this algorithm. Get this in front of new people that we potentially convert to our little audience here on the YouTube. All right, y'all. Today's discussion. Reed Blankenship. It took me a little while to make this video because I really wanted to go through slowly and look at the film on him and just kind of see, like, how are they using him? The first thing that stood out to me about Reed Blankenship is this. That young man played 55 snaps last week. He played more defensive snaps than any other player on our team. Now, I will say that some of that has to do with the fact that we were up so big, we started pulling starters, and because our depth isn't the greatest at safety, Reed isn't coming off the field in that situation. You know, kind of late in the game, you saw, like, you know, Kayvon Wallace and Reed Blankenship in there at safety. You know, they had Andre Chachere playing inside as the nickel. They had guys such as, like, they ended up moving and bouncing Josiah Scott to the outside late in that game, and then they played Zach McPherson on the opposite side. So some of that plays into it, no doubt. But nonetheless, there's some trust here. There's some trust with this young man. Because over the last 2 weeks, this young man has played 90 snaps. Obviously, opportunity because of injury has a lot to do with it. You know, C.J. Gardner-Johnson going down was a pretty big loss, man, but this young man has done the job. He has done the job, and he's done the job quite well. If you guys remember, I made that video about Reed Blankenship, like, way back. I mean, this had to be probably back in, like, May. Maybe like mid-May or so, somewhere in that area. I think the thumbnail says something like big hitter. I'll throw the thumbnail up for y'all. Something like that. And that's what stood out to me when I watched this film. And I remember Murder. If you look at Murder's comment, I don't think his comment was more so about Reed Blankenship as it was about me being like, Gate, how do you know about some random player from Middle Tennessee State? Truth be told, the reason I knew about, you know, Reed Blankenship is because out of the two smaller schools that I took the time to really study, it was Middle Tennessee State and then also UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio. Those two programs had really good defensive teams. They had some guys I thought might make their way into the league, so I took the time to go look at those two programs, which is what brought me into Reed Blankenship. And I knew right away about Reed. Dude was a hitter, man. He just stood out on the film. Like, this guy comes in with reckless abandon. He is not scared to stick you. And to be honest with you, it concerned me a little bit because Reed's not a small dude, but he's also not like, you know, this is not a 215-pound plus safety out there coming down and thumping you. You know what I mean? Like, he's broke his ankle before, to be honest. I mean, he had a pretty significant injury in 2019 that sidelined him halfway through the season because he broke his ankle on a play. He got rolled up on. It was one of those weird situations, you know what I mean? Like, happens in football, unfortunately, but the young man has been a hitter since day one. And to be honest with you, a lot of you guys, after we signed him as an undrafted rookie free agent, some of you guys knew him. I had some comments where people were like, yo, this dude's from my hometown. Like, I didn't really know much about him, but, like, watching his film from Middle Tennessee State and just kind of seeing the way that analysts are talking about this young man, I'm kind of excited to see what this dude can do in the league. And then I had a few of you guys that were like, hey, man, I know this dude personally. And this is a guy that I believe in. This guy's a better athlete than people understand. So, I mean, shout out to the community because the community really kind of carried the conversation, you know, onward. Like, you know, I was a big Jaquiski Tart guy, and I always thought, like, man, if they can get Jaquiski Tart up to speed, like, he's going to be really good for the Philadelphia Eagles. And that backfired. I mean, shout out to my guy, Paul. Paul was like, Steve, I don't think Tart wants to play anymore, man. Something seems off, like the effort's not there. We know he's got the skill set to do it, but the effort, you know, doesn't seem right to me. And then we ended up falling into a situation where Reed Blankenship made the roster. And a lot of people in this community, you guys were high on him, man. I got to give you credit, man. There's a lot of you guys that thought that within a year or two, maybe none of us were really predicting that it would come in meaningful minutes this season, per se, but a lot of you guys said, hey, man, by next year or so, like, Reed might start popping on more than just special teams. Like, this dude's a little better of a player than a lot of people realize, to be honest. Reed Blankenship has just been, it's been an incredible story, guys. I mean, this is an incredible story of a young man persevering and taking advantage of his opportunity. And I think what's crazy is I thought week 12 was a bit of a, okay, this could be an anomaly is what my original thought process was. Like, he was graded like 15th overall among all safeties in week 12. And I was like, picking off Aaron Rodgers, grades are subjective. We might want to be a little careful with that. Well, what did he do? He turned around and got ranked in the top 5 in week 13. Played 55 snaps, more snaps than anyone else on our defense. I think he had 3 total tackles, but 2 run defenses. So what they call like a defensive stop basically just means like it constitutes a loss for the offense, basically. And this young man has made a play that resulted in an interception, and it came up and made 2 sticks that ended up basically resulting in a loss for the offense. It doesn't mean a loss of yardage. It just means that they constituted to be a win-lose on the down, and it was a loss on the down. So this young man's playing at a very high level. I don't know what the future holds for Reed, but I do think that he's starting to kind of show us glimpses that he could be part of a real solid rotation at the minimum. This dude could be I'm talking about worst case scenario, guys. I'm not saying this is what his ceiling will be. I think worst case scenario, we are starting to get a story. Sorry, my voice started cracking there. We're starting to get a story to where Reed Blankenship could potentially be. He could potentially be a really, really good third rotational safety. Like, people sleep on how important that spot is in a defense, but it's very important, especially with a defensive coordinator and a defensive scheme that plays a lot of nickel formations. They go into big nickel. They like to they have a variation of the giant dime to where they still, even the dime package, will use 3 safeties. So I mean, having a guy that can come in and give you quality reps, and undraft a guy at that, like, it's a good situation to be in. And we're talking about at this point probably maybe even the floor, potentially being the floor for him. I mean, I guess you can argue the floor is that he's just a really solid 4th safety that's a good special teams contributor, but I think that the floor potentially could be as high as saying that this young man, the floor could just be a really good third safety, a really good rotational safety. And what I like about this is that the whole team is starting to play better. Kayvon Wallace is starting to rank, guys. I mean, we're talking about a very small sample size of snaps. I'm not going to try to trip. But when you look over the last 2 weeks and you look at safeties and the way they're playing, man, Reed Blankenship is like the 3rd highest rated safety. And one of those, and like when you look at the top 5, a couple of those guys really, they're playing under like 10, 15 snaps in a game. So it's a little misleading to even include them in the list. I mean, the guys that are really, truly ranked there are like Micah Fitzpatrick, Simmons from Denver, and then Reed Blankenship. Those are the 3 guys that look like they're kind of, the last 2 weeks have been kind of, excelling. I've been on point with everything. Hey, I mean, when things are going well as a football team, man, they can really go well. Like, you got undrafted rookie free agents just walking, off of your special teams unit being plugged into your starting lineup. Looks like, man, we just lost a dude that had 6 interceptions, was balling on the season. Like, oh, man, this could be rough for a few weeks. Whew. When things go right sometimes, man, they really, really go right for you. That's all we can really say about Reed Blankenship is that, man, things have gone right. They did a heck of a job scouting this young man. They knew, and a lot of us were skeptical, guys, they knew they needed safety help. They made some plays in free agency to get some guys. We got really lucky when we ended up getting C.J. Gardner-Johnson through a trade right before week 1. They didn't really address it in the draft. They rolled the dice on this undrafted rookie free agent. And now we see guys like Kayvon Wallace is starting to play well. Kayvon Wallace ranks in the top 10 over the last 2 weeks since Reed's been in the game. Interesting, man. Interesting development. I'm excited to see what we do long-term at safety, because I don't know. I would love to retain C.J. Gardner-Johnson, to be quite honest. But I don't know what the money's going to look like, and I think the longer you wait and the closer you get to free agency, the more expensive that's going to get. I don't know, guys. I just know that Reed Blankenship has played pretty well. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable with him at minimal being a third rotational piece in the safety room. But with that said, one quick note I will give you from studying the film a little bit. I will say that I would love to see Reed Blankenship utilized a little bit more as maybe the back half safety. I know that you can't just judge, coverage grades. Yes, they're impartial. They're all those things. But sometimes I do think that those guys, when they give out the grades, are missing the forest for the trees. I do think they hand out unwarranted grades to people, and they're not considering the matchups that guys are being matched up on. And I get, hey, man, be careful, because there's sometimes Epps coming up and sticking slot receivers, better tight ends, things like that where the assignment's a little tougher. So, of course, his coverage grade's not going to be quite as high as some of the other guys. I get it. But I'm just saying, Reed's done a pretty good job in coverage, man. He's not been a slouch out there in coverage. And he really plays well around the box. He's tough around the box, guys. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think about this young man, Reed Blankenship.